What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. The recent PTR patch had me pretty optimistic on the direction Blizzard were going, but a vocal section of the community has been up in arms over this Doomfist nerf, arguing that it fundamentally kills the character. Is that the case? Let's take a look at what they think, and I'll chime in on how I view things afterwards. First, what does the change even do? Here we will compare the follow-up time on live versus the PTR. On the live version of the game, Doomfist can almost immediately draw up his hand cannon and fire while the target is midair, making for easy follow-up shots. Now on the PTR, there's a noticeable lag after he uses uppercut, delaying when you're allowed to fire, causing for critics of the change to call this a self-stun and a death sentence for Doomfist. This change is important to Doom twofold, because the live version both didn't really give your opponent time to respond, good for you, death for them, but also the timing of your follow-up shot was fast enough to take advantage of the setup of the uppercut's vertical knockback. The longer the target floats away from you with a window to respond, the more of a fair engage it is for the both of you. With a window of opportunity, they can respond and your shots will be harder to hit and probably do less damage if you don't land them perfectly. And as far as top tier meta is concerned, the word fair is never really something you can consider. Whenever something's fair in power level, it means that playstyle is just not competitive. Not if you want to win anyway, but is that all there is to it? Both the newly acquired Philadelphia Fusion Doomfist specialist Chipza and Jake, former pro player turned Overwatch League caster, both agree that this is over the top. Jake says on Twitter, adding a self-stun to a hero whose entire premise is about combos and speed is incredibly bad for competitive play. Time is a resource that is most affected by player skill. Taking that away directly is a great way to ensure Doomfist is crushed at high levels of play. Jake went on to his stream as well, noting that all of the pros in the channels of communication, the discords or whatever that they can utilize to send feedback to the developers, agreed with him, or at least the vocal ones that spoke out on this issue agreed with him. Chips on his stream as well was quite sour on the changes, saying that using uppercut kills yourself. And the problem that Doom as a character has always had with balancing is that his punch did too much damage. And because he got such a lethal punch, they have to keep reining in other aspects of his kit, which is exactly the area Chipsa doesn't want to see changed, because what makes Doomfist fun, at least for him, is the fluidity of movement, being able to combo things together. And he'd be fine if the big power right-click punch, where you charge up and one-hit kill somebody into a wall, basically just goes away, which I think is pretty consistent with what a lot of high-level players think and feel about competitive games. The speed and outplay potential is what they're always after, and anything that infringes on that and either lowers the inputs you can put in, taking control out of your hands, or heightens the importance of things inherent in your kit, just like winning by existing, for example. They don't like either direction in that way. However, I would argue that Doomfist is kind of a benefactor of some of the power creep we've seen over the game. I mean, he's got really strong cooldowns. He sort of looks like a power creep character, smells like a power creep character, and sort of fits in with the general realm of some of these other issues, which is problematic because I too think Doomfist is a super cool character. I've loved him when he was just an idea. I think he's awesome as a character design, but also problematic for the game if you let him go without extreme fine tuning, which Blizzard has been attempting for quite some time. It's interesting that Blizzard have actually tried to diminish this power level of Doomfist's kits before. If you remember, there was a somewhat short-lived version of Doom that made the knockback of his uppercut basically non-existent. Really, it's seen many iterations actually, but originally it was a fully set arc that you couldn't escape, giving Doom map knockoffs for days. They took that away. Then for a bit, they overcorrected, and you too easily could escape uppercut, and Doomfist was actually dead as a character for that period, I would say. And I see this nerf as sort of a compromise to allow him to keep the power of that knockback where it is, while just slightly knocking down his ability to solo kill targets with some of his less lethal abilities. I think it's clear that Blizzard has noticed the dread of realizing, oh my god, I'm dead, when Doom teleports towards you, insta-killing you. It just doesn't feel very good on the receiving end. He's the type of character, when picked, needs specific playstyle adjustments from you and your team that a lot of players aren't practiced in, and you see far too many games at the average level of Overwatch where they try to swap to crowd control heroes who typically are either slow and can't keep up with Doom, and because of that, Doomfist still can control the engagement unless he makes a mistake. He's so fast and so durable that Roadhog, who you might think should be a straightforward counter to him, can just be danced around and largely ignored, if not entirely outplayed by Doom. Which, by the way, quick tip, if you guys are finding this to be an issue in your games, where you're picking McCree, Brig, and Roadhog, and he's still getting tons of value on you and you can't stop him, remember to think about the area you're fighting in, and if it's even possible to catch him easily with CC before he gets a kill, and if that's even a trade you can be willing to put up. Because if you can't easily stop him, you probably need to swap to speed and mobility yourself, or else these slow characters, he has too much ability to control how he engages on them, which means he has the ability to outplay you rather than the other way around. And really, from where I'm sitting, I think much of that playstyle still remains, even if there's a delay to his hand cannon. Sorry. It's probably true that at the high level, there's a good chance that he won't be the god tier hero he was for some time. But really, I think there's two sides to this issue. There's the high level near pro view where players like Jake and Chipsa know too well how important these timing windows are. And if it's a fair fight when you dive in, there's about 100 cooldowns that'll smash you in the face. Then there's the actual player base, where I assume there's a pretty big silent majority of players that find it incredibly lame that Doom gets to fly in from miles away and lock you into an insta-kill combo without you being able to interact with him, which is much different than other dive heroes like Tracer and Genji, who in comparison at least give you some time to respond, or their one-hit kills are harder to land. And somehow in these conversations, I always find myself trying to be reasonable and getting all parties mad at me at the same time. But ultimately, I personally don't mind the change, but I also see how a high-level player does the math in their head and thinks, if a pro-level Ana has half a second to respond to my dive now, she's always going to land that sleep, and there's almost no point to playing Doom. He's just dead. The problem is that sometimes in Overwatch, cool characters have to be sacrificed at the altar of playability for the rest of the cast and interactivity for players as a whole. This is just one area where I actually think devs shouldn't listen to pros, because here's the problem. Pros are just going to abuse whatever's the most broken anyway. So what? Doomfist gets a couple months of being in the pro meta, then for years he might sit on the shelf, not effective in pro play, but may still be a nuisance in the average player's game. This is why we can't really base everything on the pro level balance. If I had to choose, I would pick biasing more towards high levels of play, but in the same way that I don't think the devs should just forcibly try to keep hero pick rates at a certain spot, I think playability is more important than that. Like, if you look at any hero that's not very strong in the meta, you always can make an argument like, well, should this character just receive tons of buffs? But there's 30 characters. Like, it's never going to be the case that all of them could be equally playable at all levels at all the time. It's just never going to happen. It's never happened. So because of that, we have to find these compromises where it can work well enough for most players. And we already know the problem of pro play is that because they spend so much time playing the game, they break the game. They're going to grind whatever the best heroes are, whereas the average player might not even know how to play the best heroes, right? That alone means they're playing two different games. So although I would want top-down balancing, I would want that also with bans, which would institute a level of restriction that is sort of just natural in the average player's game. It's natural for a normal Overwatch player to not be able to play all the heroes or have a teammate that doesn't. So because of that, there's just a wider distribution of skill sets that get applied. Whereas when you spend 12 hours a day grinding Overwatch, the margins are so thin, you just have to play the best hero, right? Those formats are completely different. And if we had bans, then it would be easier for me to just say, yeah, balance for the top level. But the whole house of cards collapses in the current format as it is because they just don't translate. And the truth is, I'm not even completely sold that this kills the character at all, but it does defend how you define that term. I mean, does kill mean not top meta anymore? Then sure, probably okay. But should Doom be a top meta pick anyway, or should he be a specialist hero that works on certain maps? Because I think that's probably more healthy and more likely for a few reasons. Let me just spitball here. When Doom comes in, thanks to his best defense passive, if he hits 2 people with a slam and another 2 with uppercut, 2 buttons, he gets plus 120 health. That's 370 total. He doesn't even need to commit there. He can just escape and still have near max shields on his next engage. I think a lot of players who struggle versus Doom forget that and don't actually think about the math they have to overcome in order to have a chance against him. If Doom engages correctly, he gets more sustain than many tanks can. I mean, imagine if Roadhog could take a breather while shooting. I mean, it's just an outrageous idea. Yeah, Doom maxes out at 400 HP, but as you focus him, if he keeps hitting his abilities, more and more damage is required to punish him. All the while, those abilities cause disruption that helps focus fire, just displaces the team and creates a lot of space and does a lot of things other than just killing a solo target. When you think about his sustain, compare it to like Roadhog hitting a hook on him, which a full shotgun spread from Roadhog does 150 damage. Some of those pellets can headshot, of course, but even if he hits all of them in the head, which isn't possible, I don't think, if Doom has played correctly, he still has enough sustain to beat that, right? That's how wacky this math works, and I think probably a bit of an oversight when his passive got buffed so long ago. I don't know, I just think this character has proven that he's just strong in modern day Overwatch. When I saw this nerf originally, it didn't even really register for me because of how easily he shook off the last nerf. If you don't remember, Doomfist got his punch charge nerfed, so it would require far more setup if you ever wanted to Falcon punch somebody into a wall for a one-hit kill. But because it didn't really change his quick tap punch for rocket jumping, he still performed all of the plays he used to. It was just a little bit harder to get that very specific type of kill, but in a lot of cases, he still could find it. It just wasn't as easy as before. Why is that? I think because Doomfist just fits in the state of Overwatch now that it's a more complicated game where big value is king. Years ago, if you were to tell me Orisa Halt, Mei Wall, Immortality Field, things like this would be the strongest abilities in the game, I'd be shocked. In Dive Arrow, you just needed to be able to spin around your targets and move, and in comparison, it was a much simpler game. Nowadays, because big impact abilities are key, Doomfist just has those, where he's brawly while still being a dive hero, so I struggle to see how it's unfair for him to lose how easily he can get one type of solo kill. Because let's compare to the power level of other dive heroes like Tracer and Genji. Both of them, in my opinion, take finesse to get a solo kill, and I think that's more the power level we should be aiming for and plays better. Something that I think pro players are forgetting is that Dive used to need help from a tank to successfully confirm an elimination diving in. As it is now, Genji needs to pop off to purely get a solo kill as well, but otherwise he needs a tank to help him take space and be effective. Doom for a while broke that rule, where he was so tanky that he's all the dive you needed, and your tanks could be Orisa Sigma, the slowest tanks in the game, and he'd just be fine because of how durable and wacky his movement was. Hey, thanks Orisa, just throw a halt from miles away, that's all I need, and his one-hit kill combos would do the rest. Is that really what we want? I'd argue no. And yeah, you might say, well, Orisa is the character who's problematic there. Halt is just too good. It is too good, but if it exists at all, and if it isn't just completely worthless, it also is the other thing. Even if they nerfed Halt, if they don't also nerf Doomfist, he's still finding those free pickoffs when you combine those two abilities together. In a way that, mind you, Genji and Tracer cannot do as much damage as Doom can. Again, it's because we're in this modern state of Overwatch where Halt is amazing that Doomfist's playstyle is by default kind of amazing, even when they keep nerfing him. So from where I'm sitting anyway, they'll have to lower the power level of a lot of these things to have anything else ever be competitive. I don't think it's cool that you can have a character that is that lethal, that tanky, and also not need help from a dive tank to go in. Doom still will have the mobility to not need much help in the space creation aspect, but with the focus fire part of it, maybe that's where it comes in. But in any case, I just think that's healthier for the game. Oh no, you'll need Wrecking Ball and Winston to dive with you, and you can't just expect Doomfist's cooldowns to work with a double barrier comp alone. Whatever shall we do? No, I think dive playstyles should require teamwork to work. This solo dive raid boss stuff kind of needs to end. I don't think it's very good for Overwatch. So yeah, perhaps the pros are right in saying that this will kill the hero at the highest levels of play, but the thing that I don't think anyone's saying is that this type of nerf is probably required if we ever want to see Genji playable again. When Doom is too good, why ever play Genji? Isn't that what everyone's been saying forever? Why does that change now? I don't get it. Why does Doomfist need to feel like he's got the same potential as Dragonblade every mid-fight by spamming his abilities? No, I think that's kind of over the top. Power level decline is exactly what Overwatch needs, in my opinion. And I just think this is a consistent change and steps in the right direction that I've been asking for. So I have to think it's a good thing. It's consistent with my beliefs on the game. Because the thing I think everyone forgets in this is that when heroes have less power inherent in their hero, that's where there's more power transferred to the player. That's easy to forget. I see a lot of silly comments that don't really understand this principle, but here's the question. Do you want your hero to do all the work for you, or do you want to actually play an interactive FPS game? Less power in the heroes means more is needed of the players. And as I see it, this is one of multiple changes Blizzard is implementing to steer the balance ship towards that horizon, and I'm all for it. Doomfist might be going down to more of a niche category, but that's where Genji is right now, and the sky isn't falling, right? I think it's fine for these types of heroes to need a lot of skill put in to see decent results. We also just need to be lowering the easiest things in the game to get it to a perfect place, but I think Blizzard are focusing on the right things to get us there, because frankly, Doomfist is an easier character than Genji, and I don't think he should easily outmatch him. So, controversial video, I know, but if you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.